Picture this. A wedding dress hanging in a hotel room. Fresh flowers arranged on tables for 300 guests. A cake, 4 tiers high, waiting to be cut. And a groom who will never show up. Not because he got cold feet. Not because he had an accident. But because 2 days ago, his bride received a phone call that shattered her world. A call that told her the man she was about to marry had taken his own life. Except he hadn't. He was alive. Watching. Waiting. And what he was about to expose would leave everyone speechless. Let me take you back to where this all started, because the truth is always more complicated than the headline. This is the story of Michael Patterson and Jessica Winters, 2 people who seem to have it all figured out. They met in a way that sounds almost too perfect, the kind of story you tell at dinner parties for years to come. It was the fall of 2018, at a mutual friend's birthday celebration in Hartford, Connecticut. Michael was 28, working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. Jessica was 26, a marketing coordinator with a smile that, according to everyone who knew her, could light up any room she walked into. They were introduced by the host, made small talk over drinks, exchanged numbers, and 3 days later, they went on their first date. Nothing extraordinary about that, right? Except what happened next would make you question everything you think you know about the person sleeping next to you at night. Their relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, they were spending almost every night together. Michael would drive 45 minutes after work just to have dinner with Jessica at her apartment. She would surprise him with tickets to basketball games, knowing he was a massive Celtics fan. Friends described them as inseparable, the kind of couple that finished each other's sentences and had inside jokes nobody else understood. Michael's mother, Patricia, told people at her book club that she had never seen her son so happy. Jessica's father, Robert, a retired police officer with a natural skepticism about most things in life, actually approved of Michael. That meant something. When you've spent 30 years dealing with criminals and liars, your radar for dishonesty becomes pretty sharp. And Robert didn't detect anything wrong with Michael. In fact, he thought his daughter had finally found a good man. Someone stable. Someone trustworthy. Someone who would take care of her. 14 months into their relationship, on a cold December evening in 2019, Michael proposed. They were at the place where they'd had their first date, a small Italian restaurant called Angelo's that served the best carbonara in the state. He didn't make it a spectacle. No flash mob, no photographer hiding in the corner, no viral video moment. Just the 2 of them, a quiet corner table, and a simple question. Jessica said yes before he even finished asking. She cried, the kind of tears that come from pure happiness, and later that night she called her mother at midnight just to tell her the news. She couldn't wait until morning. That's how excited she was. They set the wedding date for August 15, 2020, giving themselves 8 months to plan. Jessica wanted a big wedding. She'd been planning her dream day since she was a little girl, collecting magazine cutouts and Pinterest boards filled with flower arrangements and color schemes. Michael didn't care about the details. He just wanted to marry her. So he said yes to everything. The venue she picked. The band she wanted. The guest list that kept growing every week. Everything seemed perfect. And that's exactly when things started to fall apart. But nobody noticed. Not at first. See, the thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly, in the spaces between normal life, hiding in the shadows of everyday routines. It was early April when Michael first felt that something was off. Jessica had always been open with her phone. She'd leave it on the counter while she showered, hand it to Michael to take photos, never seemed protective of it. But then, almost overnight, that changed. She started taking it everywhere. To the bathroom. To get the mail. Even just to grab water from the kitchen. When Michael noticed and asked about it, she laughed it off. Said she'd been getting spam calls and didn't want them to wake him up if he was sleeping. Reasonable explanation. Totally believable. Except Michael had worked in finance long enough to know that when something feels wrong, you should probably pay attention to that feeling. Then came the late-night work sessions. Jessica's job had never required overtime before, but suddenly she was staying at the office until 9, sometimes 10 at night. She'd come home exhausted, barely eating dinner before going straight to bed. Michael tried to be understanding. Wedding planning is stressful, he thought. Maybe she's just overwhelmed. Maybe she's taking on extra projects to save money for the honeymoon. He wanted to believe there was a simple explanation. Because believing that meant he didn't have to face the alternative. The alternative was too painful to even consider. But doubt, once it enters your mind, is hard to shake. It sits there, growing quietly, feeding on every small inconsistency, every change in pattern, every moment that doesn't quite add up. One Tuesday evening in late May, Michael decided to surprise Jessica at work. He'd picked up Thai food from her favorite restaurant, the one that made their pad Thai exactly how she liked it, extra peanuts on the side. He drove to her office building, parked in the visitor's spot, and walked through the lobby with the takeout bags in hand. The security guard at the front desk, a friendly guy named Marcus who Michael had chatted with a few times before, looked confused when Michael said he was there to see Jessica. "She left about 2 hours ago," Marcus said, checking the sign-out log. "Yeah, she walked out with some guy around 5:30. Michael felt his stomach drop. He thanked Marcus, turned around, and walked back to his car. He sat there for 10 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to process what he'd just learned. The Thai food was getting cold in the passenger seat. When he finally drove home, Jessica was already there, wearing her work clothes, telling him about her exhausting day at the office. She even complained about her boss giving her last-minute assignments. Michael didn't say anything. He just watched her talk, noticing details he'd never paid attention to before. The way she wouldn't quite make eye contact. The way her hands moved nervously when she spoke. The way her story had too many details, as if she'd rehearsed it. That night changed everything for Michael. He couldn't sleep. He lay next to Jessica, listening to her breathe, and wondered who she really was. The woman he thought he knew wouldn't lie to his face. The woman he thought he knew wouldn't sneak around behind his back. But the evidence was right there, impossible to ignore. She had lied about where she was. She had been with someone else. And if she could lie about that, what else was she lying about? Michael spent the next week in a state of quiet observation. He didn't confront her. He didn't accuse her of anything. He just watched. And what he saw confirmed his worst fears. Jessica was living a double life, and she was good at it. Too good. The late nights weren't random. They followed a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she'd have an excuse to be out late. A work dinner. A friend's birthday. A yoga class she'd suddenly started taking. Michael started keeping notes on his phone. Dates, times, locations, excuses. He needed to know he wasn't going crazy. He needed proof that this was really happening. If you're still watching right now, comment, I'm still here, this story is about to take a turn no one expects. June arrived, and with it came the final dress fitting, the menu tasting, the seating chart debates. Jessica threw herself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm that almost felt manic. She spent hours on the phone with the florist, arguing about whether the centerpieces should have roses or peonies. She sent Michael 17 different options for wedding favors, making him vote on each one. She made spreadsheets, color-coded calendars, detailed timelines. From the outside, she looked like a bride who couldn't wait to get married. But Michael knew better. He knew that sometimes people throw themselves into distractions when they're trying to avoid dealing with the truth. And the truth was getting harder to hide. One evening, while Jessica was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Michael glanced at it. A text message preview lit up the screen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you already. It was from a number saved under Lisa M. Michael didn't recognize the name. Jessica had never mentioned anyone named Lisa. His hands were shaking as he picked up the phone. He knew the passcode, she'd given it to him months ago, back when trust was still a thing that existed between them. He opened her messages. And what he found made his blood run cold. There was no Lisa. The number belonged to someone named Ryan Chambers. A guy Jessica had apparently been seeing for the past 7 months. 7 months. That meant it started right around the time Michael proposed. The messages went back hundreds of pages. Flirting. Photos. Plans to meet up. Ryan calling her baby and my love. Jessica telling Ryan she wished she could spend more time with him. Ryan asking when she was going to end things with Michael. Jessica saying she needed more time, that it was complicated, that the wedding was already paid for and her parents would be devastated if she called it off. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, reading through months of betrayal, his entire body numb. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was calculated. Intentional. She was planning to marry Michael while maintaining a relationship with someone else. She was going to stand at that altar in 10 weeks and promise to be faithful, knowing she'd already broken that promise before it was even made. The shower turned off. Michael heard Jessica humming in the bathroom. Some pop song that had been playing on the radio all summer. He put the phone back exactly where he'd found it and left the bedroom. He needed air. He needed space to think. He walked outside into the humid June night and just stood there in the parking lot of their apartment complex, trying to figure out what to do next. The normal thing would be to confront her. To demand an explanation. To call off the wedding. To tell everyone what she'd done. But Michael wasn't thinking about normal anymore. He was thinking about the deposits they'd already made. The invitations that had already been sent. The 300 people who had already RSVP'd. The expensive venue. The band they'd hired. The photographer. The florist. His parents had contributed $15,000 toward this wedding. Jessica's parents had put in even more. All that money. All those plans. All those people expecting a celebration. And it was all based on a lie. That's when the idea first entered his mind. It came to him suddenly, fully formed, almost like it had been waiting there all along for him to discover it. What if he didn't just cancel the wedding? What if he exposed exactly who Jessica really was? What if he made sure everyone knew the truth about the woman they thought they knew? But how do you do that? How do you reveal someone's betrayal in a way that can't be denied, can't be explained away, can't be spun into something else. Michael thought about it for 3 days straight. He went to work, came home, had dinner with Jessica, pretended everything was normal, all while his mind raced through possibilities. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, while sitting in a meeting that he wasn't paying attention to, the answer came to him. It was extreme. It was risky. It would hurt people he cared about. But it would also reveal the truth in a way that nobody could ignore. He was going to fake his own death. Not forever. Just long enough to see how Jessica really felt. Long enough to watch what she did when she thought he was gone. Long enough to gather the evidence he needed to show everyone who she really was. Michael knew it sounded crazy. He knew it would cause pain. But in his mind, the pain was already there. He was just making it visible. Over the next 3 weeks, Michael planned everything with the precision he usually reserved for financial projections at work. He researched. He made lists. He thought through every possible outcome. The plan had to be believable. It had to be something that would shock people enough that they wouldn't question it too much in the initial chaos. He decided on a car accident. Late at night. A rainy evening when visibility was poor. A lonely stretch of road near the Farmington River where accidents had happened before. He'd stage the scene carefully. Make it look real enough that nobody would doubt it. But not so real that he'd actually put himself in danger. The hardest part was accepting what this meant. He was going to hurt his parents. His friends. People who loved him. They would grieve for someone who wasn't actually dead. But Michael had convinced himself it was necessary. He told himself that temporary pain was worth exposing a permanent lie. On July 23, 2 days before what was supposed to be a weekend wedding celebration for some of their out-of-town guests, Michael put his plan into motion. That evening, he told Jessica he was driving to Boston to pick up a surprise wedding gift from a friend. She barely looked up from her phone when he left. He wondered if she was texting Ryan. He wondered if she even cared where he was going. Michael drove his Honda Accord to the location he'd scouted earlier. A curve in the road near the river. No houses nearby. No traffic cameras. Just woods and water and darkness. He'd brought everything he needed. A spare set of clothes. A backpack. Some cash. His laptop. He positioned the car carefully, making it look like he'd swerved to avoid something and crashed into the guardrail. He deployed the airbag. Broke the driver's side window. Scattered some personal items around the scene. His wallet. His phone, screen cracked. His watch. Then he called 911 from a burner phone he'd bought specifically for this purpose. When he made the call, his voice was shaking. Not because he was acting. But because he was terrified this wouldn't work. "There's been an accident," he told the dispatcher, disguising his voice slightly. "A car went off the road near mile marker 14 on Route 4. It looks bad. I think it might have gone into the river." He hung up before they could ask more questions. Then he threw the burner phone into the river, changed into his spare clothes, and disappeared into the woods. He'd parked a second car, an old truck he'd borrowed from a coworker who owed him a favor, about half a mile away on a logging road. Nobody knew about this truck. Nobody would think to look for it. Michael walked through the dark woods, branches scratching his face, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. When he reached the truck, he sat in the driver's seat for a moment, just breathing. He'd done it. There was no going back now. He drove to a motel 40 miles away, a cheap place where they didn't ask questions if you paid in cash. Room 217. It smelled like cigarettes and cleaning products. Michael turned on the small television and waited. The news broke faster than he expected. By midnight, the story was everywhere. Local news stations were reporting a tragic accident. A young man, Michael Patterson, missing and presumed dead after his car was found crashed near the Farmington River. Dive teams were searching the water. His family had been notified. His fiancée was devastated. Michael watched it all from his motel room, feeling sick to his stomach. On the screen, they showed a photo of him. His employee ID picture from work. They interviewed the police chief, who said the strong current made recovery efforts difficult. They'd found his wallet, his phone, personal belongings. But no body yet. That detail was crucial to Michael's plan. Without a body, there would be questions. There would be hope. There would be a memorial service, but not a funeral. Not yet. And that's exactly what Michael needed. Time. Time to watch. Time to see who Jessica really was when she thought nobody was looking. Before we continue with what happened next, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This story is about to take a turn that even Michael didn't expect, and you're going to want to see where this goes. The morning after the accident, Jessica's world appeared to crumble. At least, that's what everyone saw. Michael watched it all unfold through social media, through news reports, through friends who were posting about the tragedy. Jessica's Facebook page became a memorial wall. People were leaving comments. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Michael was such a good guy. Praying for you during this difficult time." She updated her profile picture to one of her and Michael from their engagement photos. She posted a message that was shared thousands of times. "I can't believe he's gone. We were supposed to get married in 3 weeks. I don't know how to exist in a world without him. Please respect my privacy during this time." It was perfect. It was exactly what a grieving fiancé would say. Michael read those words over and over again, looking for any hint of insincerity, any crack in the performance. But there was nothing. She was good. Really good. Jessica's mother, Carol, gave a tearful interview to the local news station. She talked about how excited Jessica had been for the wedding. How Michael was like a son to her. How this tragedy had stolen their family's joy. Michael's own mother, Patricia, was beside herself with grief. She kept calling his phone, even though she knew he wouldn't answer, just to hear his voicemail message. His father, Thomas, a man who never cried, broke down during a press conference, begging anyone with information to come forward. Michael watched his parents' pain from that motel room and almost broke. Almost called them. Almost ended the whole thing right there. But then he reminded himself why he was doing this. He needed to see the truth. And the truth was about to reveal itself in ways he hadn't even anticipated. 2 days after the accident, Ryan Chambers posted something on Instagram. It was a photo of a sunset, nothing special, just a generic image with a caption that read, "Thinking about better days ahead." To most people, it would mean nothing. But Michael noticed Jessica liked it within minutes. Within minutes. Her fiancé was supposedly dead, and she was liking her secret boyfriend's posts about better days ahead. That same evening, Michael did something risky. He created a fake Facebook profile. Used a stock photo of a middle-aged woman. Made up a whole identity. Margaret Sullivan from Portland, Oregon. He sent Jessica a friend request, along with a kind message about having lost her own fiancé years ago and wanting to offer support. Jessica accepted the request within hours. She was collecting sympathy from strangers. Building her narrative. Playing the role of the devastated bride-to-be. Through this fake profile, Michael could see everything Jessica was posting, everyone she was talking to, every move she was making. And what he saw made his hands shake with anger. 3 days after his supposed death, Jessica met up with Ryan. Michael knew because she posted her location at a coffee shop across town, and 20 minutes later, Ryan posted from the same location. They were being careless now. Or maybe they thought they were safe. After all, who would question a grieving woman having coffee with a friend? But they weren't just having coffee. Michael had another trick up his sleeve. Before staging the accident, he'd installed tracking software on Jessica's phone. It was something he'd done a week earlier, when she left her phone charging in the living room while she took a bath. The app was hidden, invisible, sending him regular updates about her location, her calls, her messages. Technically, it was illegal. Michael knew that. He didn't care anymore. He'd crossed so many lines already, what was one more? Through this app, he could see text messages between Jessica and Ryan. And what they were saying to each other was worse than anything Michael had imagined. Ryan, I know this is a terrible thing to say, but part of me is relieved. Jessica, I know what you mean. I feel awful for thinking it, but at least now I don't have to figure out how to end things. Ryan, when do you think enough time needs to pass before we can be public? Jessica, I don't know. A few months maybe? We have to be careful. People can't know we were together before. Ryan, I love you. I wish I could hold you right now. Jessica, I love you too. Soon. Michael screenshot everything. Every message. Every location. Every piece of evidence that showed Jessica wasn't grieving at all. She was relieved. She was planning her future with Ryan. She was using Michael's supposed death as a convenient solution to a problem she didn't know how to solve. The memorial service was scheduled for 10 days after the accident. The venue was the same place where the wedding was supposed to happen. Ironic, isn't it? The guests would gather in the same room, but instead of celebrating a marriage, they'd be mourning a death. Jessica spent the week before the memorial planning everything. She chose the photos for the slideshow. She picked the music. She wrote a eulogy that she planned to read. From everything Michael could see, she was throwing herself into the role completely. His co-worker, Derek, who was helping Michael stay hidden, told him he should just reveal himself. Man, you've made your point, Derek said during one of their secret phone calls. Everyone thinks you're dead. Your parents are destroyed. Just tell them the truth and be done with it. But Michael wasn't ready. He told Derek he needed to see the memorial. He needed to see Jessica stand up in front of everyone and perform her grief. Only then would he know for certain. The day of the memorial service arrived. August 2nd. It should have been 13 days before the wedding. Instead, it was a funeral for a man who wasn't dead. Michael couldn't attend, obviously. But Derek could. Michael gave him a small camera, one of those tiny ones you can clip to your shirt, and Derek wore it to the service. He live-streamed the whole thing to Michael's laptop. Michael sat in that motel room, watching 300 people gather to mourn him. The venue was decorated beautifully. White flowers everywhere. Photos of Michael at different ages displayed on easels. A memory book where people could write notes. His mother was wearing black, her eyes red and swollen from crying. His father stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the span of 2 weeks. Michael's younger sister, Emily, couldn't stop sobbing. His friends from college were there. His co-workers. His neighbors. Even his old baseball coach from high school had driven 3 hours to attend. And at the center of it all was Jessica, wearing a simple black dress, accepting condolences from everyone who approached her. When it was time for her to speak, Jessica walked slowly to the front of the room. She held note cards in her hands, but they were shaking so badly she could barely read them. Her voice cracked as she began. Michael was the love of my life. From the moment we met, I knew he was special. He made me laugh. He made me feel safe. He made me believe in forever. She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying. We were supposed to get married in less than 2 weeks. I was supposed to become his wife. We were supposed to have children together, grow old together, build a life together. And now all I have are memories and the unbearable weight of grief. Michael watched this on his laptop screen, and despite everything he knew, despite all the evidence of her betrayal, part of him wondered if maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe she did love him. Maybe she was genuinely devastated. Maybe the thing with Ryan was a mistake she regretted. But then his phone buzzed. A notification from the tracking app. Jessica had just sent a text message. While standing at the memorial service, eulogizing her dead fiancé, she had her phone in her pocket, and she'd just texted Ryan. Michael opened the message. This is so hard. Can't wait until this is over and we can finally be together. The text was sent at exactly the same moment she was telling everyone how much she loved Michael. She was literally performing grief while texting her boyfriend about their future together. Michael felt something break inside him at that moment. Not his heart. That had already broken weeks ago. This was something else. His faith in people, maybe. His ability to trust, definitely. He watched the rest of the memorial in a kind of detached horror. Jessica finished her speech. People hugged her. They told her how strong she was. How Michael would want her to keep living. How she'd find happiness again someday. And she accepted it all with tears streaming down her face, nodding, thanking them, playing the part perfectly. After the service, there was a reception. Sandwiches and coffee in the same room where their wedding cake was supposed to have been cut. People shared stories about Michael. His college roommate talked about the time they drove 12 hours to see their favorite band. His sister talked about how Michael used to make her laugh when she was sad. His mother couldn't speak at all. She just sat in a corner, staring at nothing, destroyed by grief. And through it all, Jessica was on her phone. Texting Ryan. Making plans. Counting down the days until she could stop pretending. If this hooked you already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment because what happens next will absolutely shatter your expectations. That night, Michael made a decision. He'd seen enough. He knew exactly who Jessica was now. There was no doubt, no room for second guessing, no possibility that he'd misunderstood anything. She was a liar. A manipulator. Someone who could look people in the eye and perform emotion she didn't feel. Someone who could accept sympathy and support while secretly celebrating her freedom. And now it was time for everyone else to see it too. Michael spent the next week preparing for his return. He contacted a lawyer, explaining the situation, making sure he understood the legal implications of what he'd done. Technically, filing a false police report was a crime. Causing emotional distress to his family could potentially lead to lawsuits. But Michael didn't care about any of that anymore. He just wanted the truth to come out. His lawyer advised him on the safest way to reveal himself. They decided on a public setting. Somewhere with witnesses. Somewhere Jessica couldn't deny or deflect or make excuses. They chose the wedding venue. The actual wedding day. August 15th. The day Michael and Jessica were supposed to get married. Michael contacted the venue manager, a woman named Sandra who had been incredibly sympathetic after his supposed death. He called her from his burner phone, disguised his voice slightly, and told her he needed to speak with her in person about something urgent. They met at a diner 2 towns over. When Sandra saw him walk in, very much alive, she nearly fainted. Michael spent 2 hours explaining everything to her. The betrayal. The fake death. The plan to expose Jessica. Sandra should have been angry. Should have called the police. Should have refused to help. But instead, she listened. And when Michael finished talking, she said something that surprised him. "I've been in this business for 20 years. I've seen a lot of couples. And there was something about Jessica that never sat right with me. I couldn't put my finger on it. But now it makes sense." She agreed to help him. She agreed to keep the venue reservation active, even though everyone assumed the wedding was obviously cancelled. She agreed to let Michael hide in the back office until the right moment. Because yes, Jessica was still planning to use the venue that day. Not for a wedding, obviously. But for a gathering. A remembrance party, she was calling it. A way to honor Michael's memory on what should have been their wedding day. Can you imagine that? Using your dead fiancé's wedding venue to throw a party in his honor while you're secretly dating someone else? The audacity was stunning. Jessica had sent out emails to close friends and family, inviting them to gather at the venue on August 15th. She said it would help bring closure. Help everyone heal together. Help celebrate Michael's life instead of mourning his death. About 60 people had confirmed they'd attend. Michael's parents. His sister. His closest friends. Jessica's family. And, Michael discovered through his tracking app, Ryan was planning to be there too. Not as Jessica's boyfriend, obviously. He'd be introduced as a friend. Someone offering support during a difficult time. Nobody would suspect anything. Michael told Derek about the plan. Derek thought he was insane. "You're going to traumatize everyone all over again," Derek argued. "Your mother is finally starting to sleep through the night. Your dad is back at work. Emily is seeing a therapist. And you're going to walk in there and what? Surprise them? This is cruel, man." And maybe Derek was right. Maybe this was cruel. But Michael had stopped caring about cruelty somewhere around the time he discovered his fiancée was planning to marry him while sleeping with someone else. August 15th arrived. The weather was perfect. Sunny and warm, not a cloud in the sky. The kind of day people hope for when they plan outdoor weddings. Michael arrived at the venue early. He parked in the back, where nobody would see his truck. Sandra let him in through a side entrance. He waited in the office, watching through a crack in the door as people started arriving. His mother was one of the first. She wore the same dress she'd worn to the memorial service. She looked fragile, like a strong wind could break her. His father was beside her, his face hollow and gray. They were followed by his sister, his aunts and uncles, his friends. Everyone was dressed in semi-formal clothes, the kind of outfits they probably would have worn to the wedding if it had actually happened. And then Jessica arrived. She wore a cream-colored dress. Not quite white, but close enough that Michael felt a surge of rage when he saw it. She was with her parents, her mother fussing over her, her father looking stoic and protective. And right behind them, trying to blend in with a small group of people, was Ryan Chambers. Michael had never seen Ryan in person before. Only in photos from Jessica's phone. He looked exactly like his pictures. Tall, athletic build, perfectly styled hair, the kind of guy who probably spent an hour at the gym every morning. He was wearing a navy suit and carried flowers, which he handed to Jessica when nobody was looking. Michael watched this exchange through the crack in the door, his hands balled into fists. The gathering began. People mingled awkwardly. Nobody quite knew what to say or do. How are you supposed to act at a remembrance party for someone who should have been getting married that day? Jessica had arranged for a slideshow to play on a large screen. Photos of Michael from throughout his life. Baby pictures. High school graduation. College. Photos of him and Jessica together, smiling, looking happy, looking like they had a future. Someone had made a playlist of Michael's favorite songs. They played softly in the background. Tables were set up with food and drinks. It looked like a wedding reception, but with the color palette of a funeral. Black and white and gray and cream. Depressing. At exactly 3 o'clock, the time when the wedding ceremony was supposed to have started, Jessica stood up to speak. The room fell silent. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about how much it meant to her that they'd all gathered to honor Michael. She said she was trying to find meaning in this tragedy. Trying to turn her grief into something positive. She announced that she was creating a scholarship fund in Michael's name. She was going to donate the money they'd saved for their honeymoon to charity. She was going to live her life in a way that would make Michael proud. It was a beautiful speech. Really, it was. If you didn't know the truth, you'd be moved to tears. Michael's mother was crying. His sister was crying. Even some of his friends who usually kept their emotions in check were wiping their eyes. And that's when Michael decided it was time. He nodded to Sandra, who was standing by the door. She gave him a worried look, one last chance to change his mind, but he shook his head. He was doing this. Michael walked out of the office and into the main room. For a moment, nobody noticed. They were all focused on Jessica. But then his sister looked up. She froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She grabbed their mother's arm, pointing. Patricia turned. When she saw Michael standing there, alive and breathing and very much not dead, she made a sound that Michael will never forget. Part scream, part sob, part prayer. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting. Crying. Some people thought they were seeing a ghost. Michael's father stumbled backward, his hand clutching his chest. For a terrible moment, Michael thought his dad was having a heart attack. But Thomas was just in shock, unable to process what he was seeing. Michael's sister ran to him, grabbing his arms, his face, making sure he was real. How are you here? What happened? We thought you were dead. Michael looked at her, then at his parents, then at Jessica. Jessica had gone completely white. She was standing frozen in place, her mouth hanging open, her eyes wide with something that looked like terror. I'm sorry, Michael said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm so sorry for what I put all of you through. But I needed to know the truth. He pulled out his laptop. Set it on one of the tables. Opened a folder filled with screenshots. Text messages. Location data. Photos. Months of evidence. Jessica has been having an affair, he said. For 7 months. Since right around the time I proposed. The room went silent. You could hear people breathing. Someone's phone fell to the floor. Michael looked at Jessica. She was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. No, she whispered. No, that's not true. His name is Ryan Chambers, Michael continued. He's actually here today. Offered to support you during this difficult time, didn't you, Ryan? Every head in the room turned to look at Ryan. He had tried to slip toward the exit, but Michael's cousin, a big guy who played football in college, was blocking the door. Ryan's face was red. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Jessica started talking fast. Michael, please, you don't understand. Yes, I made mistakes, but I love you. This whole thing with Ryan, it was just confusion. Wedding jitters. I was scared and I made bad choices, but I love you. You texted him during my memorial service, Michael said. The room gasped. While you were giving your eulogy, telling everyone how devastated you were, you texted him saying you couldn't wait until it was over so you could finally be together. I never said that, Jessica protested. Michael turned the laptop screen toward the crowd. Projected the messages onto the wall using Sandra's equipment. Everyone could see them now. Date stamps. Time stamps. Jessica's words. Her secret plans. Her relief that Michael was gone. Her excitement about a future with Ryan. Michael's mother was the first to speak. You let us grieve, Patricia said, her voice shaking. You watched us fall apart. You came to our house. You cried with us. You let us comfort you. And the whole time, you were happy he was gone. Jessica tried to approach Patricia, but Thomas stepped between them. Don't, he said coldly. Don't you dare come near my wife. Jessica turned to her own parents, looking for support. But her mother was staring at her like she didn't recognize her. Jessica, Carol said slowly. What have you done? Ryan tried to leave. He actually made it to the door before Jessica's father, Robert, the retired cop with 30 years of experience dealing with liars, stopped him. I don't think so, Robert said. You're going to stay right here and face what you've done. The next 20 minutes were brutal. People started yelling. Asking questions. Demanding explanations. Jessica tried to defend herself, but every word that came out of her mouth just made things worse. She said she was confused. She said Michael had been distant. She said Ryan made her feel understood. She said she didn't mean for any of this to happen. Michael's sister asked the question everyone was thinking. Were you going to marry him? Were you actually going to stand at that altar and promise to be faithful when you were sleeping with someone else? Jessica didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. One of Jessica's bridesmaids, a woman named Sarah who had known her since childhood, spoke up. "I defended you," Sarah said quietly. "When people whispered that you seemed to be handling Michael's death too well, I defended you. I told them everyone grieves differently. I told them you were being strong for his family. And now I find out you're a liar and a cheater and possibly the cruelest person I've ever met." Other people started sharing their own observations. Jessica's co-worker mentioned how Jessica had been unusually cheerful at work the week after Michael supposedly died. One of Michael's friends remembered Jessica checking her phone constantly during the memorial service. Another friend had seen Jessica having dinner with some guy a few days after the accident but assumed it was a family member offering support. Piece by piece, everyone started to see the truth they'd been too trusting to notice before. The gathering fell apart quickly after that. People didn't know what to do. Some left immediately, disgusted. Others stayed, wanting answers. Michael's parents pulled him aside. His mother held his face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you do this to us?" Michael tried to explain. Tried to make them understand that he needed proof. That nobody would have believed him without it. That Jessica was so good at lying, she would have convinced everyone he was the problem. But his mother just kept crying. "You let me think my son was dead," she said. "I planned your funeral. I picked out the casket. I wrote your eulogy. I laid in your empty room and cried until I couldn't breathe. And you were alive the whole time." Michael's father didn't say much. He just looked at his son with an expression Michael had never seen before. Disappointment mixed with relief mixed with anger mixed with grief. Finally, Thomas spoke. "What you did to Jessica was justified. What you did to us wasn't." And that hit Michael harder than anything else that day. Because his father was right. In his quest to expose Jessica's betrayal, Michael had betrayed his own family. He'd put them through hell. He'd caused them pain that would probably never fully heal. He'd broken their trust in a way that might never be repaired. Jessica eventually left with Ryan. They didn't leave together, but they left within minutes of each other, and everyone knew where they were going. Some of Jessica's family stayed behind to apologize to Michael's family. They said they had no idea. They said they were horrified. They said they didn't raise her to be this kind of person. Carol, Jessica's mother, approached Michael directly. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I'm so sorry for what my daughter did to you. You didn't deserve that. But I need you to understand something. What you did today, letting us all believe you were dead, that was cruel too. You hurt innocent people to catch a guilty one." She was right. Michael knew she was right. In the days that followed, the story went viral. Local news picked it up first. Then regional outlets. Then national. "Man fakes his own death to expose fiancé's affair" became a headline everywhere. People had strong opinions. Some supported Michael, saying he did what he needed to do to reveal the truth. Others condemned him, saying he went too far, that the punishment didn't fit the crime. Social media was split. Think pieces were written about betrayal, trust, and the ethics of revenge. Michael became a polarizing figure. Some people called him a hero. Others called him a villain. His employer placed him on administrative leave while they figured out what to do. The police questioned him about filing false reports, but ultimately decided not to press charges given the complicated circumstances. His relationship with his parents became strained. They were glad he was alive, but they couldn't forgive how he'd handled things. Family dinners became awkward. Holidays would never be the same. His sister tried to mediate, but even she admitted she didn't know how to feel about what Michael had done. Jessica's life imploded. She lost her job because her employer didn't want to be associated with the scandal. Her friends abandoned her. Her social media accounts were flooded with hate messages until she deleted everything. She and Ryan stayed together for about 3 months before that relationship fell apart too. Apparently, the foundation of their connection had been the thrill of secrecy. Without that, they had nothing. Jessica eventually moved to a different state, trying to start over somewhere people didn't know her story. Michael heard she changed her name. Changed her appearance. Tried to build a new life from scratch. As for Michael, he went to therapy. A lot of therapy. He had to work through the betrayal he'd experienced, but also the harm he'd caused. He had to confront the fact that in trying to expose someone else's darkness, he'd revealed some darkness within himself. The need for revenge. The willingness to hurt people he loved to achieve his goal. The moral compromises he'd made along the way. It took time, but eventually, he started to find some peace with what happened. He reconciled with his parents, though their relationship would never be quite the same. He stayed close with his sister. He left his job and started working as a consultant, traveling frequently, avoiding his hometown as much as possible. If you're still here, subscribe, because stories like this only work when people stay. 2 years later, Michael met someone new. Her name was Rachel. She knew his whole story before their first date because, well, everyone knew his story. It was one of the first things you'd find if you Googled his name. But Rachel didn't judge him. She understood that people make complicated choices when they're in pain. They dated slowly. Building trust. Being honest about everything. Learning to be vulnerable without fear of betrayal. When Michael proposed, it was nothing like his proposal to Jessica. No restaurant. No ring. Just the two of them on a quiet beach, him simply asking if she'd be willing to take a chance on building a life together. Rachel said yes. They got married at a courthouse with just their parents and siblings present. No big reception. No 300 guests. No elaborate plans. Just two people making a promise they both intended to keep. And so far, they have kept it. This story doesn't have a perfectly happy ending. How could it? Too much damage was done. Too many people were hurt. Michael carries guilt for the pain he caused his family. His parents carry the trauma of believing their son was dead. Jessica carries the consequences of her betrayal and the public humiliation that followed. Ryan carries the shame of being the other man in a viral scandal. But there are lessons here. Lessons about trust and betrayal. About the lengths people will go to when they feel wronged. About the difference between justice and revenge. About how sometimes the punishment we devise for others ends up punishing us just as much. Michael once said in an interview that if he could go back, he wouldn't do it the same way. He would have confronted Jessica privately. Cancelled the wedding. Ended the relationship with dignity. But he also said he couldn't guarantee that, because pain makes people do irrational things. Betrayal makes you want to hurt the person who hurt you. And sometimes, that desire for revenge clouds everything else. So here's the real question. Not whether what Jessica did was wrong, because obviously it was. But whether Michael's response was justified. Can you understand why he did what he did, even if you wouldn't have done the same thing? Is there a point where someone's betrayal is so deep, so calculated, that extreme measures become acceptable? Or are there lines we should never cross, no matter how much we've been wronged? Think about it. Put yourself in Michael's shoes. You're about to marry someone you love. You've invested years of your life, thousands of dollars, and all your emotional energy into building a future with this person. And then you discover they've been living a double life. They've been lying to your face. They've been planning to marry you while being in love with someone else. What would you do? Would you confront them privately? Would you call off the wedding and walk away? Would you expose them publicly? Or would you do something more extreme to ensure everyone saw the truth? It's easy to judge from the outside. It's easy to say what you would or wouldn't do when you're not the one experiencing the betrayal. But the truth is, most of us don't know how we'd react until we're in that situation. Most of us like to think we'd take the high road. But the high road is a lot harder to find when you're drowning in pain and anger and humiliation. And what about Jessica? Yes, she betrayed Michael. Yes, she lied and cheated and planned to marry him while being with someone else. Those are undeniable facts. But did she deserve what happened to her? Did she deserve to have her worst moments broadcast to the world? Did she deserve to lose everything, her job, her friends, her reputation, her entire life? Some would say yes. She made her choices, and she faced the consequences. Others would say no. That the punishment far exceeded the crime. That public humiliation and long-term damage to her life wasn't a proportionate response to infidelity. What do you think? Where do you stand on this? My mom said I can't hit 1,000 subscribers before today ends. Subscribe and let's prove her wrong. This story raises uncomfortable questions about morality and revenge, and I want to hear your thoughts. Would you have done what Michael did? Do you think Jessica got what she deserved? How would you have handled this situation if you were in Michael's place? Comment below because I'm genuinely curious about different perspectives on this. And if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because misery loves company, but because these kinds of conversations matter. We learn from other people's mistakes. We grow from understanding different viewpoints. We become better people by wrestling with difficult moral questions. So what's your take on this whole situation? Was Michael a victim seeking justice or was he a man who went too far? Was Jessica a villain or was she a flawed person who made terrible choices but didn't deserve to have her entire life destroyed? Is there such a thing as justified revenge, or is revenge always wrong regardless of the circumstances? Think about the people in your own life. The people you trust. The relationships you've built. How well do you really know them? How certain are you that the person you're looking at is the person they truly are? And if you discovered tomorrow that someone you loved had been lying to you for months, how would you react? Would you be calm and rational? Or would you feel that same burning need for the truth to be exposed, for everyone to see what you saw, for the person who hurt you to face consequences? These aren't easy questions. There are no perfect answers. But they're worth thinking about. Because life is complicated. People are complicated. And sometimes the difference between a hero and a villain is just a matter of perspective. What happened between Michael and Jessica is extreme. Most people will never face a betrayal this deep or go to such lengths for revenge. But most people will face smaller versions of these same questions. When to trust. When to forgive. When to walk away. When to fight back. How to handle betrayal. How to seek justice without becoming the villain yourself. And that's what makes this story worth telling. Not because Michael was right or wrong. Not because Jessica deserved what happened or didn't. But because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. About what we're capable of when we're hurt. About the thin line between justice and revenge. About the consequences that ripple outward from our choices, affecting people we never meant to harm. If you're still watching at this point, comment, "I'm still here," because the conversation doesn't end with the video. It continues in the comments. It continues when you share this with friends. It continues when you apply these lessons to your own life and relationships. So let me ask you one final time. Knowing everything you know now, what would you have done? And more importantly, what will you do differently in your own relationships moving forward? Because that's the real lesson here. Not what Michael and Jessica did. But what we can learn from watching their story unfold. How we can build more honest relationships. How we can communicate better. How we can handle conflict without destroying everything around us. How we can be better partners, better friends, better people. That's what matters in the end. Not the scandal. Not the viral headlines. Not the dramatic reveal. But the quiet work of being honest with ourselves and others. Of building trust that doesn't need to be tested. Of creating relationships that can withstand difficulty without crumbling into betrayal and revenge. That's the story worth telling. And it's the story you get to write every single day with every choice you make. So make it a good one. Make it one you'll be proud of when it's over. Make it one that doesn't require faking your death to expose the truth. Because the truth should be something you live, not something you have to orchestrate an elaborate scheme to reveal. What's your take on this story? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. And if you thought this was shocking, wait until you hear what happened in our next case. Subscribe for more real-life twists.